Hey, what's going on, guys? Right on job. Today I want to do a review of the Bryton Rider 530. So I've had the Bryton Rider now for well over 6 months, and I've been using it pretty much each and every time I ride. Very rarely do I use the STRAVA app on my phone anymore. Just want to do a quick review, the pros, the cons, things of that nature. So, got everything written down here. So the first thing is the battery life. So here's the device. So the first thing is the battery life. So the battery life is really, really good. And you'll get about 28 hours of on time with this device. It advertises as 33. That's going to be in the battery saver mode. But non-battery saver, you'll get about 28 hours. And I think the black and white screen really helps with that. So it's not a color screen or anything. It's just a plain black and white screen. So it's pretty good. Another pro is the size of the device. So it's pretty good size. Not too big, not too small. You can actually see things really, really well. And at night, when you have the light on, you can see things extraordinarily well. So all your stuff is right there. Next thing is it could do about 72 different measurements. So like your speed, the time, the temperature, your average speed, Di2 devices, and a power sensor. It could all detect those things, and you could get a live feed of information right on your device. Another pro, and the last pro that I have, is the actual price of the device, which is right about $160 off Amazon. I've seen prices down to about $120, $130. Maybe around holidays you'll get those prices, but expect to pay somewhere between $150 and $170. Okay, now to get into the cons of the device. So it tends to freeze once you hit 40 degrees Fahrenheit. So once you're riding around for a bit, like I'll do my commutes, which will last about 40 minutes under 40 degrees, and when I actually hit the stop button, then it freezes a bit, and the whole system is locked up, and you can't do much with it until it unfreezes. Sometimes you'll have to even go ahead and turn off the device, turn it on again, and hope that your ride is saved. So when you actually hit start, when you hit the start button, you cannot leave the riding screens. So pretty much what I mean is, so right now here's the riding screen, and I have a couple screens that I could actually just go through. Now let's say, for example, I wanted to go to one of these screens and switch some of the information, or follow track. This is actually a pretty common one. You cannot start your ride, or sorry, you can start your ride, but you cannot start navigating a route that you may have pre-prepared for the ride. So if you hit start ride, that's it. You cannot go into your device and hit the navigate button to start navigating. So you have to go ahead and go into follow track, select your route, and start navigating. So this tends to be pretty inconvenient at times. Alright, so this is something else with the device. Let's say, for example, so a lot of times when I ride from home somewhere and back. So the way I go normally will be the same way I come back. So my start and end points are exactly the same. Now let's say if I'm riding and I hit my start point, I'm also hitting my end point, and all of a sudden the device says, okay, the ride is done, and it will no longer navigate me, even though I've just started my ride. So while building your routes, you need to be very careful of this. While you're actually riding, you cannot see your current route, or sorry, your current map. You cannot see where you've been so far, irregardless if you're using the navigation, or if you're just riding for fun, just riding around. What you can see here, and if I actually bring up an old route here, so this is when Steve and I went to the beach. Let's see if it comes up. Okay, so this is the route here. Now it would be really nice to get like a base layer to it, because there's no point of reference here. Pretty much, actually this is not from my Rockaway ride. This is actually from when I went to Plainview Park. But pretty much you can't tell where I was up here, this is where the water is, where LaGuardia is, and down here is towards Prospect Park. But you really don't get any reference, or you don't know where you are or anything like that. There's no base layer. I really wish there was a base layer. So there's a really weird thing that happens when you synchronize your device. There's two ways to sync your device to the Bryton cloud, and the Bryton cloud, or whatever you want to call it, can then go ahead and sync to your STRAVA device. So let's say, for example, and I'll bring it up here, you get home from a ride and you want to synchronize your ride to Strava. You can actually go ahead and use the data sync button to do that. Now, I've been doing a lot of rides to and from home, but not going to work. So every time I hit sync, it's through the data sync button on the device, and it's been syncing to Strava with no problem. Now, whenever I go to work, I don't sync through any Wi-Fi. I sync through the app on my phone, the Bryton app. Now, all the rides that I've done since my last Bryton app sync will try to sync through the phone. So it's like it syncs twice, which is really weird because it's already gone through the whole Bryton cloud service, or whatever you want to call it. So now, probably tomorrow when I ride my bike to work, I'm going to have to deal with this. And if you try to stop the Bryton device from syncing, then the Bryton device might completely freeze up, and then it just has the power symbol on the screen, and now you have to reset it, and it just becomes a really bad mess. So there have been a few times where I have used the navigation on this device, and I don't really care for it. So I used it back on Christmas Day, and it was okay. It would tell you where to make the turn, so it would have the street name and it would have the distance until the turn, which is really good. Something weird that would happen is, even though my whole device is set in miles and feet, it would tell me the return in kilometers and meters, which got really strange. That's one. Two, let's say for example, there's a left turn coming up and half mile, the arrow that's supposed to be me on the map will actually have me literally right by the turn. So I think that the turn is right here, but really it's half mile up. And something I've noticed in the newer updated version of this is the street name doesn't show up anymore and the direction doesn't show up anymore. I don't know if I turned off any kind of the settings or anything, but I don't see this anymore, and it's pretty frustrating working with this GPS device from a navigation standpoint. So here's a problem that might be universal to all of these handheld or all of these cycling GPS devices. You have to calibrate the altitude yourself. And I still haven't done it, so there are times where I'm riding by the water and I know I'm not 100 feet above sea level. It's really impossible. So this is something that I wish Bryton would work on, so you could automatically do it or something. There are steps written in the instruction manual, but I think when the GPS device has your, or as Garmin would call it, 3D GPS, where it could detect your lat long and also your elevation, there should be no calibration done at all. I mean, maybe someone who understands GIS really well could explain why these devices need us to calibrate it. But once you have, I believe, at least 4 satellites, there's no need for you to calibrate anything. And last but not least, the buttons are really, really hard. You have to really press hard into the buttons. Now, keep in mind, this is a second-hand device. Someone gave this to me. I did use a device, one of these devices, brand new. Steve, he has a brand new one, and I messed around with it a bit. And it's a little better because it's new, but you still do have to press pretty hard. You can see how hard I'm pressing. It fell out my hand. You got to press pretty hard to kind of get this going. And don't get me started about these bottom buttons. These are really, really hard to press. And I'm not even talking about while riding, just in general. They're pretty hard to press. Bryton has released a new device called the Rider 10. It could connect to your phone, shows your text messages, your missed calls, your emails, things of that nature. I would love to see that on a Bryton Rider 530 eventually, or some kind of upgraded version of it. I do know that a lot of these problems I've listed, or a couple of these problems I've listed, are hardware related and you just need to wait for a new iteration of them. But most of these problems are software related and can be updated through their Wi-Fi, through their cloud system to the device. So hopefully these are problems that Bryton are aware of, and hopefully that they can go ahead and fix these things. But hopefully you guys learned a bit about the pros and cons of this device. Most of the cons are just my personal pet peeves with it. Maybe these things don't bother you at all. Maybe you don't really care about it. But hopefully Bryton really does work on these things and make this a better device. If you like these videos, go ahead and hit the sub button below. Would greatly appreciate it. And I see you guys later.